So I'm going to grab a really good trio to play around with, of course, is like a yellow, an orange, and a red, because they're all in the same little family. If you looked at the color wheel, they all kind of sit together along the edge of the color wheel. And you guys know me, I don't like to talk too much about the color wheel because color theory gets frustrating to me. I go with what makes me feel good, colors that are happy or give a feeling to the coloring page. Like if you're doing a Halloween coloring page and you want to give the feeling of dark and gloomy, then I would go for colors that make me feel dark and gloomy. So we're going to talk about Jennifer's rule of thirds, and I've talked about this before on other blending type demos, and I'll just go over it again. I think of the section I'm going to color in thirds, like so the whole thing is sort of the 100% or the 1, and then I think of it the next part as the 2 or the 2/3, and then the last part, or usually the darkest part, is the last third or the 3. So that's my thirds. I think of the area cut into thirds. So if I was going to color this little petal into the thirds, I would start with the main color that is going to sort of be the whole hue of the whole flower, which is usually my lightest. And typically when I'm following my own rule of thirds, I'll start with the lightest color. And the only time that rule is broken is if there are really definite overlaps or shadows, or if there's a light source that I am really trying to highlight, like if I'm working on a gem, or like that little Pokemon I just showed you how the nose had a highlight. So I can't believe I'm using this Doug trio as my example. Okay, so when I was coloring the face of this Doug trio, I knew I wanted a shadow under the hairline, and so I started with the dark here and established the dark line first because I wanted to make sure that shadow didn't get lost. And I wasn't using my Prismacolors, I was using colored pencils that didn't layer very well, and so I needed to establish that dark line first. And so in this case, the dark was my first go-to. And then when I was doing the hair, though, it was the light that went first because I wanted to follow my rule of thirds here. So it really depends on the situation, and that's why you just kind of need to practice. But typically, I follow my rule of thirds unless there is a shadow or an overlap that I really need to highlight. So that's why I wrote those things down. So if you are going to make a note or take a screenshot from your phone or whatever, this would be a good thing to take a screenshot of. And remember Jennifer's rule of thirds, unless you're looking and wanting to highlight a light source, or there's an overlap or a shadow that you really need to make stand out. So let's do the rule of thirds. So the first one of the third is the whole petal. So I would go over the whole petal. Now this is if I wasn't going to use any blending tool. This is if I was just sitting down with my full set of colored pencils. And no blending pencil, no mineral spirits, no Vaseline, no anything. This is what I would do if all I had was some pencils. And then I'd go to my medium tone is number 2, or the 2/3 of the way up. So that's the second part of the rule of thirds. And then the last part of the rule of thirds, or the last third, is your darkest tone. And typically, especially on a flower, I put the darkest part down into the middle because the light would hit the outside of the flower and the inside is the darkest. And the best way to learn things like that is just look around. Go look at a flower and see how the light hits it. Or pull up some pictures of a flower on Pinterest or Google and see what it does. And you can build that as dark as you want. I want that red to be pretty red. Let me bring it up closer so you can see the first part. So obviously we don't have a very good blend yet, but this is just the first step. Okay, I really like how I built up my red. So now the next step on the rule of thirds is we go back to the middle color and we recolor that 2/3 part right on top of that red. And that's going to blend in the red into the orange. Look how pretty. Okay, so this is that shading practice we did. We're practicing so it's a little darker down here and then it kind of wisps out here into the yellow. Ooh, I like that word, wisps. Wisps. Okay, so here I'm just taking a little more time and making sure this blends nice and smooth, and then go back to your yellow now and go over the whole thing again with the yellow to blend it all out. And this is going to smooth out all of these layers. So this is sort of acting like your white tool or your colorless blender, because we're using this light yellow to blend all these layers together. And because we're using a decent quality pencil, it's working pretty good. And this is going to work okay with your Crayolas and everything. So the better quality pencil you have, the better this is going to work, but it will work on any pencil. Like I've said before, it's not necessarily the quality of pencil, it's your practice level that's going to bring out the best art. Okay, let me bring this up close and look how pretty. So we got a really good blend there using Jennifer's rule of thirds, and we didn't have to use any mineral spirits or anything, and look how pretty that blend is. So that's blending 3 colors. And of course they're all in the same family or right next to each other on the color wheel, and so they go together really nice and happy because they already are in the same family. And isn't that lovely and great? So now I want to show you how I would do it over here where we have an overlap going on. And that is going to change how we blend it out, because here we just simple, straightforward rule of thirds. Okay, so in this case, moving over here, when I look at this area, if I was coloring a coloring page, the first thing I look at is I have an overlap and I want it to look like it's below my flower. And the best way you can do it is by making it with some shading and have the blending look like it's behind these pretty little petals. So I would start with my dark, which is the opposite of what I did here, but that's okay because I accounted for that rule right here, like I said. And so I'm going to establish where my shadows are going to be really light, so that it's kind of like a little hint to me to remind myself, Jennifer, you want shadows here. So I would lay shadows here first. And then I would start thinking about the leaf itself. And this is a blending area here, not blending, shading. So I don't do it very dark to begin with because it's hard to erase colored pencil. Not impossible, but hard. So just sort of build up a little shading here, take a little time. Okay, and then I would look at the leaf itself and decide, okay, look for my light source. Let's say the light's coming from out here somewhere and shining down. So maybe there's like a lighter area right here. So probably this part of the leaf would be in shadow a little bit. So I'm going to create a bit of a shadow right here. And we'll call that good for shadows. Okay, so for this one, we're going to do the same rule of thirds, but we're going to kind of build it this way. Okay, because we've established our shadows are this way, and we're going to build the rule of thirds this way now. So we're going to start again now with the rule of thirds. So first step is the whole thing. So we're going to go ahead and do the whole thing. And I'm going to kind of leave my shadows alone a bit for now. I can go over them a little bit. It's more about filling in these lighter areas right now. Remember, we're going to go back over again This is just establishing the first layer. This is why I like this technique, because when you're working in light layers, it gives you lots of room to make mistakes and correct them and do all kinds of things to fix your errors. I love being able to fix my errors. Okay, now that was the first step, or the one of the 1/3. Now the 2/3 part is the middle tone. So 2/3 of it is going to be the middle tone. So stay away from the middle area on this leaf, because that's where our highlight is. And we're going to use this middle tone and shade lightly here using your shading skills, and go darker down into here, into where our shadow is. And then over here, I don't want to be as dark as right here, because that's my shadow, but I do want to go kind of dark here, just sort of show that it's bending. And again, this is just practice. You can pull up a picture of a leaf on Pinterest and look at how the light hits it and follow the shadow of that. That is not cheating. That is how artists do it. Anytime you watch an artist do a studio tour, they have reference books on their shelves that they pull out and look at pictures of things when they sit down to do their art. So looking at pictures to see how something looks so you can copy a shadow or something is not cheating. Okay, so I'm going to build up and into here now, leaving this middle zone. And then back to my dark for the last third. And I might just hit a tiny tip right here because it looks a little odd. Okay, and I'm going to build it up. Oops, I made a little mistake, but who cares, because there are no mistakes in coloring, right? At least in my coloring world. And you are in my world, so welcome to it, people. I like that. Okay, now we're going to go back again, back to the 2/3, and this is going to go faster now because I can just build up on the layers, being careful of my middle zone. Okay, and then the lightest, again, you go over everything. Okay, ooh, this turned out so pretty. Okay, there we are. There's my pretty leaf. 3-color blend, no tools, just the Jennifer's rule of thirds there.